Hello, Demetrius here. Quick update on this podcast. Josh and I ran into a couple of issues technologically with audio and with editing. So for that reason, I had to clip a few things, record something a second time, and try to merge it together. And as a result, there might be a couple patches that aren't perfect, and there might be a couple things that are either repeated or put together in a funny order. So little patchy job on the editing and the audio at times. So I apologize for that. I hope we make up for it with the content and know that I will do my best to improve for the future. Welcome back to another episode of MN Pool Bootcamp slash Cue It Up Network slash Slate podcast.
Question mark? Podcast question mark?
Uh, Demetrius Gelatis here with
Josh Burble.
Josh Burble, my best friend, road partner when we ever get out of the house, and
Exactly.
pool playing. Anyway, so that's awesome, Josh. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, of course, man. It's exciting. It's always fun.
We've got a fun one. I'm looking forward. It's been a little while, as always, because we've been a little busy. Uh, we've had a few things going on. Holidays, birthdays, kid vacation, opening up a billiard club. It's just been one thing after another.
I was wondering if you kind of sneak it in.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah,
Well done.
yeah. Tell them about Slate.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, we did it. We got her open. We opened on June 1st. It's been a little bit of a whirlwind since we've opened. It was pretty grindy and difficult to get open, fun and challenging, and everything's just awesome, Debbie. It's just absolutely, it's better than any of us even imagined, and it's just going fantastic. And I just can't say enough. It's a beautiful place. We're it's amazing. So yeah. What else? What else?
So here's
Specifics?
what
What do you
yeah,
think?
there's a couple things I think people should know. So Slate is a club in St. Paul, Minnesota that Josh and I have just opened up. It is a private billiard club. We call it billiard club so that people running Google searches don't end up thinking they're swimming pools. It's pool tables, but it's private, so it's membership only. And I think that that's a really good model. When you open a commercial pool room and you need to have thousands of people streaming through your doors to kind of support it with a lot of overhead, it could be daunting. And
Mm-hmm.
we have gone the route of having a private club that has no employees. It's just key code access to the members. We've got 7 9-foot diamond tables and one 7 foot for the civilians. And then but no, it's
Exactly.
fine, it's fine. I mean, I'm always a little elitist about the table size. Anyway, that's fine. And then
Yeah.
and what I'll say is that Josh, I mean, I'd like everyone to check it out. If you're on Facebook, go to Slate Billiard Club, search for Slate Billiard Club. Follow us, by the way. That's awesome. Um, and then but the pictures, I mean, Josh, you did it. I mean, you're the design guy. You're the guy with the vision. I couldn't decorate a 6-year-old's birthday cake. You decorated. You put this thing together to where and props, by the way, to Mike Page. Mike Page had Fargo Billiards in 2011, was like the nicest pool room I'd ever been in. And this is not a comparison. We're not here to start a war. I'm just saying you've made this like the nicest spot with a pool table I've ever been in. So unbelievable. Good job, Josh.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, man. It's something I like doing. I just like design, and we met when we thought about this place, and we thought about it being a training facility first, and it is, and we could talk about that, and we have talked about that, and we'll continue to talk about it. But from a design standpoint, that was kind of my exciting point that I was, pumped up to be a part of and kind of head up, and yeah, it's been nothing but fun, and we got fortunate enough to get the greatest canvas ever with this space in the Prior Works building in St. Paul, and I was able to just paint and carpet and put a bunch of plants up and a lot of different elements. I mean, there's a lot of details, and but that's the fun part is adding all those details and making it really really special. And that's what we've got. So it's really cool. So if you see the pictures online and stuff, it's kind of gone a little viral for us on Facebook, which has been cool, and even nationally. And then it's better in person if you get a chance to get there. It's really cool. So that's it, man.
Yeah, I have a feeling that between, some group trainings or between different things that we're doing or challenge matches and exhibitions or, whatever, I think the Slate is a place that people, if you ever have an excuse to get the Twin Cities, Minnesota area, I look forward to having people come out, so it's a private club, but by all means, shoot Josh or I a message. You can reach out to me. I'm at either email info@slatebilliardclub.com or info@mnpoolbootcamp.com. Either way, just reach out to me and let me know if you're going to be in town, and maybe we can. Anybody that's like traveling through the Twin Cities that likes pool, I'd like them to stop by and see it. So
yeah, we can definitely figure that out. Day pass for people because we do have day passes as well and guest passes. Yeah.
And Josh, one more thing, about the club before we move on is that you broke your back to make this thing happen. And I've played a non-zero role, but I'll tell you what, we didn't do it alone. Go.
Well, of course, there's I don't know if we're doing last names or just people know when we mention their name, Jeff. It's like Jeff absolutely changed my bum life and put in a bunch of work with some things that were really would have been just absolute time burglars for me and would have crushed me and made me sad have to do it. And so he just absolutely, came in and did a bunch of stuff that was really, really cool. That was really high end carpentry stuff. And it was awesome, man. I cannot, I just kept texting him, you're changing my bum life. I mean, you're saving my family here. It's like, yeah, maybe I could have got it all done, maybe, but it would have been like literally 20-hour days instead of like the days that I put in, which were pretty damn long still. But I don't think I could have got it done without him. So that was huge. Andy came in at the end exactly and saw me struggling to get open, and he jumped in and absolutely crushed it and bailed me. And just, I needed it, man. I was not broken by any stretch, but I was in a rough spot. And, we had a bunch of carpet to lay in, and it was just seemed like an endless sea of squares putting down. And he came in and jumped in, and it was awesome. And he did some other stuff too. And, Christian jumped in. He helped me with the carpet. I'm trying to think of who else. It's like
Matt's been killing himself.
Matt's been killing himself. Like he works 60, 70 hours a week, postal office. And then he jumps in with us and does a bunch of tech stuff and just absolutely does it with a smile and laughs and has fun. And, he's just killing it and doing so much tech work that I just would have zero, chance to get done, or it would be awful. So huge thanks to Matt. And
each of these people has saved us. Each of these people has saved us four figures. Like we had a quote on setting up like a stream and stuff that was like in the $4,000 range, and Matt's just like, what, exactly. I think I can do this for you guys, and he's just like knocking it out for us. So it's like not only are they all putting in work, but like they're putting in work, they're saving tons of, we're already like, you're pushing as hard as you can push, and so to get help when you're at capacity is amazing. They're helping it happen, but they're also just like, because once you reach your limit as to what you could do, and you had to start hiring stuff out and just paying it to get it done.
Yeah.
Like it's I don't even want to know. It's like, I'm not saying we couldn't have opened, but like we needed that, man. We needed that.
Yeah, for sure. And we had overage. Like we had a budget and we had tons of cushion, and we blasted, man. Cause it's like, we had things with the city, we had things come up. It's like, we had legal fees. We were very thoughtful with our budget. We budgeted enough where we could get open, and, we saved enough money. It would have been fine, but it was not fine. But I don't know. I'm trying to say the right thing.
Yeah.
We're not a couple of yin yangs, just like, opening a business. I just want to defend us a little bit, but at the same time, what you said is exactly 100% accurate. It's like everybody saved us tons of money, but more than just the money, Demi, it's the time. It's like, if I would have had to go out and hire that stuff out, I got to interview people, I got to talk to them, I got to hope they show up. It's like, these guys just saw me struggling, some of them, and or just wanted to pitch in or just offered, and then they committed and showed up and did it. And it was way better than hiring, because they were passionate, they were helpful, they were happy, and they did it,
And they were
it's like,
committed to the
it
same
was
vision. Yeah.
committed to the same vision. They were
Yeah.
excited for us, and it got to be a little bit all hands on deck. And Chris jumped in, one of the investor owners, and he did awesome labor work and freaking threw boxes away and did all kinds of stuff. And Dale, Dave's pal Dale, jumped in. He put a bunch of we have like 28 chairs that had to get assembled. He assembled like the chairs. Dave's dad came by and did chairs. It's like I just needed help, and we got help, and it was really, really cool.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, and even
off.
yeah, even I just want to thank all of our members, because we couldn't have a club without people wanting to be part of it and support pool. And then I'm going to shout out to Sam, who every one of our members has been positive. Yeah. Every one of our members has been positive word of mouth, and everybody's brought a friend, kind of a thing. But like Sam has probably brought like 5 or some friends or something. It's just, anyway, yeah. We don't really have time like to do like a name everybody and list everybody's accomplishments, because for people that weren't like, aren't in our area, don't know the club, like, this is a podcast. It's, but at the same time, I think it was worth taking a minute to talk about those guys. So yeah, thanks to all.
A lot of these guys listen to the podcast and phone to the podcast, so that's why I too. So
yeah, of course, cool.
Like I'm not spending any time on Jamie, because he told me, screw your podcast, I don't listen to it. But he's helped. So
outstanding. Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah.
I don't listen to
even though you'll never know that. That's never.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. So on that note, one thing that has happened as a result of this is that we've gotten, I don't know about inundated. I don't want to make it sound like that, but there's been a lot of, so like I mentioned that this is an interesting model. It's going with a private club instead of a big commercial pool hall. And during the process of the ramp of like getting this open, like people that have been following us on the podcast know that this has been about a year in the works, from the conception of from the inception stage to like ordering the tables and looking at properties. And it's been about a year from the time we decided to go to the time that we opened. And so along the way, I've already been contacted by many, many people that have asked me about like, hey, I'm thinking about doing something similar. I have some questions. And what happened was, at first it's like I'm trying to have conversations with people, but then, I've had a handful of conversations and you've had a handful of conversations, but then when we opened, we kind of got a lot of messages from people thinking about doing something similar. So on the one hand, I'm like really, really, really excited that there's so many people that are passionate about pool that are pursuing doing something in their pool community similar. On the other hand, we're just at a spot where we just opened and we're running around with to-do lists that are like the Hydra, where every time you cut off one of its 100 heads, 2 more grow back. And so I just realized like we can't spend, an hour a day talking to people and coaching pool consulting. So what we wanted to do is we just wanted to talk like, hey, if we had 15 to 20 minutes with somebody talking about like, what did we do? Now, that doesn't mean that has to be what other people do, but like, what are the top things that we would pass on to somebody that's thinking about opening up something in their community? And we wanted to just talk about it on a podcast so that we could get that message out to everybody. And if people reach out to us, maybe we could just kind of refer them to this. And, I don't like blowing people off, but I just can't provide the help that they were asking for. So Josh, kind of putting you on the spot here, but if suppose I was in another city thinking about opening up a billiard club, a private club, like what the one we just are putting together, what advice would you give them?
I'd say have a plan down, like get a plan together, and it's going to have some different elements to it. You're going to have an overall business plan, but you're also going to need to have like a marketing plan, an operations plan. It's just, you have to work on all those things. So you have ideas on how you're going, what it's going to cost you to start it up, what it's going to cost you to run it per month, what your projections are for break even, how many members you're going to need. And then you have to have some sort of marketing plan to see, can I hit those numbers? Is it realistic I'll hit those numbers? What's our plan to get to those numbers? And then operations wise, like how much time is it going to take to run? Who's going to run it? Is it going to be no employees? Is it going to be just owner operated? What are the tasks that'll need to get done to make sure that everything gets handled? And then so and then I think you're going to talk a little bit too about differentiation. So what's your plan for differentiation? How are you approaching this endeavor, this business, this project, without just trading tables for time? And yeah, so you want to talk about that, Dem? Did I just step on your touchdown call, or?
Yeah, it's okay. I'm used to it. I know. No, it's just kidding. It's like I was telling a joke and you jump in with a punchline. It's fine. So my whole thing. Okay, so zooming out, I love what you're saying, because a couple of zoomed out ideas are like, what are the questions we should be asking when we're thinking about opening a club? And so you've been rattling off these things and like specific questions you need to be able to answer. One thing that I remember, so I was in corporate sales for over 20 years, and sales is like, it's a game. It's a game like poker's a game, like pool's a game. It's all a game of metrics. It's like, basically you've got a product, you've got a service or product that you're selling. You have to bring in a certain amount of revenue to cover your expenses and make a profit. And you have a certain amount of time to bring in that revenue, which means you need to have a certain pipeline of you have to have plans of like, how are you going to get in front of customers? Are you calling them? Are you knocking on doors? Are you advertising? They're going to call you. Like, how are you shaking hands with people or talking to people on the phone? And then what are you offering them? How does it differentiate? What's your competitive advantage? And then how many, do you kind of have to have a knowledge of how that pipeline is going to flow, so that at the end of the day, you have enough business to stay in business. And I remember something that was monumental in my development was one time I listened to another podcast, and they were talking about, it was like a radio program actually, that was talking about, this guy was talking about why businesses fail. And he said the number one reason businesses fail is because they don't even know what business they're in. And the business that you're in is marketing. And I was blown away by this. And he was like, it doesn't matter if you sell bicycles, you're in the marketing business. Because if you have a bicycle shop and you have a little retail shop and you sell bicycles, it's great if you're a friendly person that's trustworthy and gives people a good deal. It's great if you have great bicycles at low bottom costs. It's great if you do repairs in shop and you take care of your customers and you do programs for the youth. That's all great. But if they don't know you're there and they're not walking into your shop, you will fail. On the other hand, if you have lines out the door, then you could be pretty ineffective at the rest of that and still succeed. Like, the number of people coming into your place is kind of like, it's like, and so then I got into business to business sales for a few years. Like the last 5 years of my sales career, I was B2B, and I saw the wins and I saw the losses. And that was absolutely right, because everybody that opened a restaurant that failed, it was all like these people that like, hey, I came from this country and I have this great menu and these great recipes and I'm going to have this great menu and I'm going to have this great thing. But then like, they didn't know how to drive people in the door and the thing didn't work. And then on the other hand, there was people that just kind of had generic menus. Like, yeah, it's just kind of an American grill. We'll have burgers and fries. But then they had things to drive people in the door and they succeeded. And so that drove home the point to me that business, all of these other things matter, but all of it can be made to work with customers coming in the door, and all of it will fail without it. And so, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I mean, that's where we had the conversation yesterday. I texted you and I'm like, we are always aware of how our marketing's going and how our basically our lead flow is, and how do we continue to get people to, come in and talk to us and look at our place and sign up. So.
Yeah. And so along the way, so some of the specific questions besides how are we going to get people interested, you mentioned you said trading tables for time. But I think what you meant is one question is, what is your competitive advantage? Or what you mentioned is, what is your differentiating factor? Because in our Twin Cities community, there are a lot of buildings that have pool tables. And so what we didn't want to do is, and I've seen this happen and it pains me, with pool halls. I've seen this happen in Minnesota. I've seen this happen elsewhere, where people open up pool rooms and they're like, I'm going to open up this pool room and I'm going to get beautiful pool tables in there. And then people, if I build it, they'll come. Like, I'm going to have this big fancy pool room with a lot of nice tables and it's going to be great. But it's like, well, why are people going to come there? And it's like, well, we've got nice tables. And it seems like the thing is like their value proposition, if you will, is like, well, we're going to rent pool tables for money. Like, we're going to trade table time for money. But the problem is that's what all pool halls do. And so why are people going to form new habits and find new routes to your pool hall. And why are they going to come there instead of somewhere else? And it's like, well, we have nicer equipment, or we're cleaner or something. Those are all good, by the way. Nice equipment is good. Clean is good. Like there are, good neighborhood, good friendly stuff, friendly staff. Like those are all good. But those are all, when people go to a pool hall, like those are kind of like what they expect from a good pool hall. Now, don't be wrong. I mean, if there's everything else in town is run down equipment and rude service, like they might come to you because they're not getting that elsewhere. But really, that's kind of like what you expect from a good pool hall: is reasonable equipment, safe environment, clean. So like for us anyway, the big thing is that I've been doing pool training for now for 3.5 years full time. And so I've learned that there's a lot of need in the community from people, that there's a lot of desire for people to get better. So long story short, we've put together kind of some training programs for this club, and we have a training theme and a training culture that we're bringing, so that when we talk to people that are interested in joining or interested in finding out more about our memberships, it's like, I'm not just trading tables for money, table time for money. I'm like, look, do you want to be part of a group that's improving their pool game and not just like playing the leagues year after year after year? 5 years go by, they haven't gotten any better. They can't figure out why. Like, we're going to be a community of people that are competitively pushing each other in a competitive but supportive atmosphere, drilling together in group practices and sparring together, and really, doing drills and working on clinics and doing, like, we're going to be pushing each other. And we've recruited some serious players, some of the best players in the area. We do have the nicest equipment, but we also have, we're kind of building a culture to where it's going to help people get where they're going. And so we're not just renting tables, we're also part of a community that's excitedly improving their pool game. And that's kind of what makes us a little different. And so it doesn't have to be your competitive advantage, but I would just encourage, my thing would be, anybody that's opening a pool room or a club anywhere, you should kind of know, what is it that you're going to offer that the other pool halls don't, that where people would want to be part of it, and understand that, the competitive advantage is important, and that you have to be able to answer how people are going to hear about you and why they're going to want to come into your club. You can't just build it and hope they show.
And then I would also say, your advantages as an owner or ownership group, like, what are your advantages? Why you, with you owning it and starting it? So like when we started our place, I looked at you, I looked at me, I looked at our two investor partners, and I said, okay, what do we all bring to this thing? And do those advantages, do those skills put us in a winning position, or help us to get into a winning position? And so, like, that's hard for a person that wants to open up a club or a room, for them to look at themselves and say, what is my personal competitive advantage, or me and my partners? I think that's a tough look to have, but necessary.
It is, because to your point, like, I've got something kind of special going on with the pool training I do. So I've kind of built a brand and a reputation as far as the help I've been able to provide people as far as training. You've got a background with design to where so it's like, I have a track record, and I have confidence in what I can bring to developing people's pool games. You have a track record with design to where you go to the pictures at Slate on Facebook and look at the pictures, and you'll see what you were able to do. And then between the two of us, we're both strong regional players to where, we're both playing out of the club, as well as bringing in, guys like Brian Brecky and other strong, regional players that can then provide some of the best players in the Midwest to be sparring with and training with, which is pretty cool for people. So you combine playing, a room with a handful of strong 700 players playing on 9-foot tables, that with brand new diamond tables, with a training culture in an environment that looks like Slate. And it's like, all of a sudden, it would be hard for somebody to drive by Slate and go to another pool room. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep. And so if you're looking to start a place, or someone out there, that people that have been emailing us, or listeners, or future proprietors, it's like, it doesn't have to have all that and be all that, but whatever it is that you're doing, it has to be defined. And so you know what you're getting into, and you are realistic about what the outcomes are. And you might not have the same competitive advantages that we have or have set out, or that we're working with, but just try to define what yours are. And if it's just a couple of things that are more like the entry fee into the tournament, like a nice clean place with good equipment, then you need to think a little harder and look a little harder at what you're doing and try to figure out, it doesn't have to be all the things we named. It could be something else. Maybe
right. It could be corporate events. It could be
exactly.
youth programs. It could be
youth
it could be.
programs. Yeah,
There's a lot of
yeah,
things you can do anyway. So that's cool.
yeah,
That's cool.
yeah. No, that's it, man. Yeah,
No, it's good. That's really good because I've talked about the rain dance where people like open up a pool room and then they sit around and hope somebody shows up, kind of like a farmer that hopes it's going to rain this week. And I just I've seen that, and pools a tough industry. I mean, commercial expenses are high, inflation's high. It's a hard, people. It's like it's a hard industry. It's a hard business, and so it doesn't mean it can't be done though. It just means that the days of the color of money days or the hustler days where the
those
pool
are
booms,
gone. Yeah,
the days where there's just like you open up a building and there's just lines out the door waiting to play and pay table time. Those days have kind of faded. So you just have to be a little bit more like when it's like playing poker. It's like when there's times if you're playing with a table full of drunks that are just punting away their money, you can kind of play any two cards pre-flop and just outplay them. But when you're playing in a tough game, you kind of have to have a pre-flop starting range that's a little bit more, a little bit more like if you're facing bets and you're out of position, you might want to play a little bit stronger range. That's all.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Well, I got just one little
Send it.
Okay,
Send it.
Tim? I just think I would also say, which this is a personal thing that a person needs to like think about. Don't squint at your numbers. If you have a plan to do something and you build it, like if you have an idea, okay, you have an idea that you want to start a club or pool room or whatever, but let's just say private club. Don't squint at the numbers. Like, don't look at it. It's you kind of, I don't know. This is just what I've done or what we've done. Is Devin and I are both a little more on the conservative side, so we play a little nitty style of business.
Wait for rockets. We're gonna wait for rockets.
We're gonna wait for rockets, and we're gonna jam pre-flop and hope we get called. No, it's just like I've been around a lot of businesses where people they fall in love with the idea of having the business and starting the business to the point where they squint at the numbers and just play hope chess where they just cross their fingers and hope it works out. And
Josh,
it's
I'm
hard to say don't.
so glad you said this. You know what, Josh, you wanted to open up a club. I mean, like you already owned a pool hall when you were younger, but like for the last 15 years, you've been talking to me about opening a club. And I've always been like this total, like, Rain Buzz Killington or something where I'm like, nope, not doing it. Nope. It's a good way to light a bunch of money on fire. We're going to be welded to some project where we're working a full-time job as a volunteer, stressed out at 2 a.m, worried that we're going to, how we're going to pay the bills and hurting, having, looking at potential divorce or homelessness because we're trying to figure out how we're going to keep this thing together and having nightmares about, how we're going to pay these bills. And it's like not putting myself in that spot. So to Josh's point, what you can't do is love the idea of a club so much that you justify and sweep aside concerns and sweep aside unanswered questions and sweep aside challenges because you're like, well, I'm just going to make it work because I love it. And if you love it with all your heart and you will it with all your heart, you can just kind of love will carry through and win the day. It's like, no. We did it the opposite way, which is for years and years, we basically said, prove to me, like I was arguing the other side where I'm like, no, we shouldn't open a club. Unless, like, here's all the reasons why you shouldn't open a club. Here's all the reasons why it won't work. Here's all the reasons it's a bad idea. And basically, we always had that vision, especially you always had this vision. But then at the same time, we kept looking at it like, can I find an excuse not to open it? Can I find it like instead of finding an excuse to play these two cards, can I find an excuse to fold? And then finally, one day, we had enough things lined up and enough things in place where there was just no way not to open. It insisted on itself. And then we're like, well, I guess, we've had the dream for years and we've come up with all the reasons not to open, but now we've got good answers for every one of those reasons. We have such an ironclad success plan that I guess it would be criminal not to play these two cards. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
100%. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah. Thank you, Tom.
I'm sorry. I interrupted you. So if you had more you wanted to say, go ahead.
Nothing. Just a funny story about that. How that worked. I was always poking down. Hey, let's do a club. And then he finally, like, like poo-pooed it, let's just say, for so many years that I totally got off it. I'm like, yeah, that's the stupidest idea in the world. Let's stop doing it. I completely stopped thinking about it. And then down came back to me, I don't know how much longer down the road, but said, let's do it. I'm ready. And I'm like, all right, let's do it.
And what it was that changed, was that I realized that I could do group training at a rate to where by group training does two things for a club. One is that I'm bringing in groups of people that are part of the training fee goes to the club to pay table time for the tables, which means that I could bring in a non-zero revenue to the club directly as table time. And two, that each month I'm bringing in groups of people in the area into our club that will train out of our club. And once they train and once they see our setup and once they play in our tables and once they train with me and with you and once they see, which we're going to talk about, like once they go through that, like some of those people, and even if 5 or 10% want to join, then that's a constant, membership growth engine for our club. So, yeah. So those reasons there combined with all the other stuff we've got, it was like, it lined up, man. It all just, I couldn't fold. And we finally stumbled into aces. So anyway.
Yep. Yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
So yeah, be able to answer those questions and don't squint. Thank you, Josh. Cool.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. One thing, Josh, with these, now that we have a club, one thing with training that opens up the doors for is that we can do groups because now we have more than one table. My ultimate goal, though, is to try to help as many people as I can, as best I can. And one of the pain points for me has been, not everybody can afford a 3-day boot camp in terms of money. Not everybody can afford 3 days of time. And not everybody's at a level where they're going to be able to train for 3 days and have that and continue to absorb and grow. A lot of people at the strong beginner and intermediate levels might be in a spot where that's way overkill for what they can take on. And they're better off with, 4 or 6 hours, something like that. So, level of play, pricing, and time availability have been kind of like barriers to entry for a lot of players that would love to work with me, but just can't quite fit into that mold of a 3-day boot camp. So now I'm really excited, Josh, because we get to work together on this. And we have a solve for at least for the players that are regional to Minneapolis. So Wisconsin, I'm talking to you, North, South Dakota, Iowa, even Chicago. Like, here's what we got going on. We are going to be running 8-person groups on 4 tables for 6 hours from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. And I'm super excited about how we're setting this up because time frame, boom, it's only 6 hours. Money, boom, it's only $150. And then in terms of skill, I'm super pumped about how we're setting this up because unlike I'm doing the opposite of what I've seen elsewhere. What I've seen with a lot of clinics is people have a clinic where it's like a 6-hour clinic and they're going to do stroke and fundamentals and pre-shot routine and aiming systems and banking. And then they're going to do break shot and then jump shots. And then they're going to do 8-ball patterns and 9-ball patterns and cue ball control and mental game. And then they're going to end up with a trick shot exhibition. And I look at that and I'm like, no, you can't. Like, you could skim over a bunch of stuff and maybe somebody learns something, but that's not really what I want to do. So instead, what we're doing is the opposite, which is I've done over 100 3-day boot camps now. And I've seen that while everyone's unique and everyone has individual things that they need work on, and everybody has areas that they're stronger at their skill level, but I've seen almost like 5 buckets of like where there's like these areas, like if you had to track like every little league of everybody's game, it's like the vast majority of leagues fall into one of a few major categories. So what I've decided to do is I'm going to do a clinic where each clinic targets one of those categories, one of those buckets. So it's like if after 100 boot camps, again and again and again, everybody needs A, everybody needs B, everybody needs C, everybody needs D. Well, then I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to do a 6-hour clinic where we just focus on B, where we just focus on A. And that's it. And the beautiful part about that is that people can come work on that one thing and actually learn it, practice it, train it, improve it in their game, and work on different runs where we could so it's going to first be learning on what it is and how it works, why it's important. Then we'll do some exercises to help them learn those skills. And then we'll start doing some drills to train those skills. And then we'll look at some run out situations where they can see how to use those in games. And that's it. And so when they leave, they're going to have new skills and new tools and be better players. And in the areas where almost everybody's game is, if not on fire, at least not running smoothly. And so, and last thing I'm excited about is we are going to be doing this together. So we're going to have two instructors. So thank you, Josh, for joining me on this. And you're going to hear two people's point of view, but also that allows us to where if we have a slight variance in skill between the strongest and the weakest, well, we can always split off into two different groups midway through the session. And I'll have two different levels of material so that if we need to, if we need to give people a more advanced version of what we're working on, or we go a little deeper with a few people, we're not going to hold the stronger players back or lose the weaker players. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Overwhelm them.
Yeah. So we're prepared to shift gears. We're going to start the same and then kind of sort people out. And then it's just awesome. I really, really think that this is the way to train. I'm really excited about what we're going to be training on. As far as getting started, if you want to be part of this clinic, I'm doing everything backwards. So instead of advertising dates and saying, here are some dates that we're training and then hoping that they fill up, I don't want to do that because that's not how I want to do it. What I want to do instead is, if you want to train with me, email me or call me at, info@mnpoolbootcamp.com, or go to my website, give me a call. And then if you're interested in training with me, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wait till I have the right number of people contact me to set up a clinic. And then I'll just set up a clinic that and go from there. So I need the demand before I can create the supply, so that I know that I can put these things on the calendar and get them rolling. So we've got one kicking off next Saturday. I'm very excited about, but yeah. And so then people say, well, what are these buckets and what are we training on? You know what? I've got different levels of material right now. I'm starting with a cue ball 101, which is kind of a more aimed at strong beginners, but it can apply to intermediate players as well. But I've also got one that we're going to put together that's ready to go for intermediate to even advanced players that want to improve their cue ball control beyond just the basics. So basically consider it like beginning cue ball control, advanced cue ball control. I've got it ready to go. And if you have questions, I want you to call me. If you want more information, I can talk about it, but that's as far as I can go right now. Anything you wanted to say or add, Josh?
No, it's awesome. I'm excited. It's next Saturday. It just as a heads up, that one's full. So I don't know if you mentioned that, but that one is full, and we're looking to get the next one set up and filled and get them scheduled. And yeah, it's awesome, man. We've been doing a lot of work with our members, and this is some work that we can do with non-members, which is also very exciting and cool. And yeah, it's going to be awesome. That's all I can say. It's going to be great. So
yeah, and one thing I'll add with this is that we've also set it up to where people can figure out, like, if I'm happy to talk to somebody, if they're interested in training with me, to find out what level they're at, figure out, should they come in on the first course? Should they come in on the second course? Where should they come in? And then, in terms of like, if there's five total courses that, kind of add levels. And then once I figure out what level they're at, they can come in, they can train with me or train with us. I'm sorry, I'm used to saying me. And they can train with us. And then if they get something out of it, and they find it really valuable and they're excited and they see changes in their game, well, then they can come back to the next level and they can work their way from wherever they start through those courses. And it's almost like you can get almost like you're not going to get a 3-day boot camp experience quite, but you're going to get a lot of the meat and potatoes that you'd get in a 3-day session with me one-on-one. And you can get it at your own pace without a lot of commitment of time and money, trying it out little by little, building it into your game over a more slow and steady approach. So I think it's really, really great. I just wanted to mention that's how I'm setting these up. So you can, I just want to give everyone everything I can, if this is the best way I can figure out how to do it. So cool.
You're just trying to feed them the elephant.
Yeah, feed them the elephant. That's right. All right.
One bite at a time.
I also wanted to mention, I have been successful with these. I do a Zoom, so it's over the interweb, 2-hour. Okay. I do mental game coaching, and the format is, it's 3 2-hour Zoom calls in a 3-person group. And I do a 3-person group to keep the cost low. And I do 3 2-hour sessions because then we do it every other week for 3 sessions so that people have time to digest, listen back to our call, maybe, do some homework assigned to them, whatever. But it's a mental game training program that I've put together. I've run it 2 sessions now, and I've got another one about to kick off, but I need one more person to fill out the third person, and then I'll run that one. So I run one of these every couple months. And so what I will say is the people that have gone through this with me are sincerely like telling me I've got to continue to do these and offer these, that everyone should do this. It's pool changing. It's almost, I mean, I don't want to come on strong because I don't want to say it, but if I don't say it, then who else is going to say it? Because they're not on my podcast. So I've been told that their mental games are 100% like 180 different from where they were. They're way more confident. They're way more purposeful. They have a plan to handle the situations that were difficult before, that they feel more mature, more confident, more not invincible, but like just, they just feel like so prepared and so and not just in pool. It's such a good thing. I just have to share it. So I really encourage people to take advantage. And I've got one spot for my my July August session. So hope to hear from a couple people and get into mental game training. And on that note, I was thinking about training because we're going to get into one other thing too, but I was thinking a little bit, Josh, about, when people think about like training and what, like paying for a pool lesson, like there's a lot of people, I realized when we opened Slate, something that I had a filter on, Josh, which is that for the last few years, have only really been spending a lot of time with people that have come and trained with me. So these are people that are willing to fly into Minneapolis and train with me. And that's only like a very, very, most people are like, they don't do that. So I've been very filtered where I only see these really serious, like diehard students that are like practicing and written goals for their game and like really working hard and, taking names and kicking ass. And as we got to go into like a pool room, that's where it's more of like we have Slate open and we get to see like kind of the whole range of pool players. I've been kind of culture shocked because I forgot how rare it is for people. Like, I mean, for me, it's like every week I have someone flying in. I got 2 guys flying in on Tuesday night, tomorrow night. So anyway, it's like I've got people coming in all the time. I think that's normal, but then I forget that that's really rare, and that most people don't do that. And I started kind of wondering, like, why is it? Like, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's not like I'm complaining about business. Like, I'm fine. I'm good. Booked up until waiting list or whatever. But that's fine. But like, I always wonder, like, why are people not training? And I started thinking about like what people learn when I train with them. And I think about the things that I've taught people and what that's worth to me. And so I was thinking about with one of my last students where I'm like, I like at the end of our session, I was doing a recap of like the things that we spent time with that I think he took away conceptually, technique, new tools and new applications. And I was like, I listed off like 5 or 6 things. And each one of these things was, if it wasn't priceless to me, it was so close. Like I was thinking about like, so to kind of give somebody an example, think about your pool game for a minute and think about if you could never draw the ball again. And if somebody came along and said, like, what would they, like, how would you say, like, what is draw worth to you? And if somebody came along and said, I'll pay you X dollars to never be able to draw the ball again, like, how much would they have to pay you? And we kind of talked about this the other day, Josh, just talking. So, like, I don't need to rehash this whole thing, but like, what we both came up with was what? What was the number that we kind of came up with?
Well, it's kind of priceless. Like if you couldn't draw the ball, you wouldn't play pool. So how much joy or energy or whatever do you get out of pool? And my answer was, well, there's no amount. Like I have definitely quit in the past, but I'm past.
That's right.
But so I would, you could have gave me $10 and I'd have taken it. But now, like I found a new meaning, a new path, a new joy, a new everything, and it's priceless, man. I just wouldn't give it up for anything. So it's very, 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 it's worth a lot. it's worth a ton.
It's very strange. So I'm 100% with you, Josh. I'm 100% with you. There are things like I showed this guy, like, of the recap that we did, I'm like, each one of those things was practically priceless to me, because without them, I might not play pool. And pool means so much to me that, like, there's more to, like, the money once you're able to, feed your family. Then it's like, I don't think there's a number you give me to forget or lose these abilities or not be able to enjoy these. And so I thought about that, and I thought about, like, what I'm teaching people. And I thought about the breakthroughs they're having. And I'm like, why is it that so few people are training and doing training? And it's like, now I guess I mean, there's different answers, and I didn't mean to get into it. I just find it interesting. I mean, the real answer is, Josh, that's probably why I play at the level I play at, and I'm as knowledgeable as I am, because I do value those things that much. And maybe other people that, obviously, if people don't play pool, then you could pay them $200 to never draw the ball again, and they'd be happy. So if people aren't serious about the game, that makes sense. And if people are just like, kind of like hobbyists that are not really serious pool players that are just going out the league once a week and hitting balls around and having a few beers to get away from the family one night a week, like, I can understand that. And then there's another group of people that are, like, knowledgeable, where they've studied the game for years, and they've played with good players, and they've played on teams with good players, and played in tournaments with good players, and they've been around and watched videos of pros and watched YouTube videos, and they've developed their game. And then because of that, I think maybe they just feel like they know what there is to know. And I think, as we talk about it, Josh, I think we've probably hit on this before, but, like, I think that's what it is. I think people get to the spot where they think they know what there is to know, and they think that I know how to play pool, and I ran 3 tables once, and my high run in straight pool is 60 balls, so I know how to play. I'm just need to get better at doing what I already know how to do and get more consistent at it. Because if I could execute on the table what's in my mind, I know I'd win all the time. So I know how to play. I just need to put in some hours and get my fundamentals right. I mean, I think that's the narrative that keeps people from training.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that, I think so. And I think people don't, I think there's another part, Demi. I think people don't know what to train. And so one thing that I've been doing is spending time when I see members and just saying, like, today I did it with 2 members. I was like, okay, I was training Andy. We were training for about an hour and a half together. And then Ben came in, and I'm like, hey man, we were talking a little bit. We were kind of talking about what Andy and I were doing. And I spent 10 minutes just showing him how we train. And then that way that I showed him how to train gives him, like, a direction and energy, and he's training. So I walk away after 10 minutes, and he spent another 40 minutes training, and it's like, before he's just kind of coming in and hitting balls. He does some warm-up stuff. He does some 5-hit stuff. So it's great. He is doing training, but there's another level of training that he can get to, and if he has the knowledge for it. So some of this, people just don't really know what to train or how to train as well. So there is a level, or there is a part that you were saying about a component of, it's hard, it's difficult. They don't want to train the wrong thing. There's all kinds of excuses and reasons people can give for not training. But I think at least my mission, Dem, with the club is to at least give people an exposure to how to train and how to train with intensity, but keeping it fun. Yep.
Well, we've talked about this because there's different ways to go. So the people, like, I almost look at it like the forest and the trees. Like, there's like all these little pieces of a great pool game, and then there's, like, how you put them together and how it should look. And it's almost like when I do these 3-day boot camps with people, I'm usually working with strong, intermediate, or advanced players that have already developed a lot of tools and are looking to really, like, they're just trying to figure out, like, how do I make progress? And so a lot of what I do is I do both the forest and the trees, which is, like, I try to show them this big picture vision of, like, here's where your pool game is at all these different areas. Here's how I think a great pool game should look. And here are specifically the gaps between how you're doing it and how I think it should look. I can demo that on the table to some extent. And then I can isolate and say, these are the things that we need to improve. Some of it's maybe technique. Some of it's maybe strategy. Some of it's maybe, a certain, some of it's cue ball, some of it's patterns, some of it's mental, some of it's whatever. But, like, here's exactly what those links are that are kind of missing. And then So we kind of look at the big picture forest, compare forest to forest, figure out what trees are different, and then we go to work on those trees. Well, what you do, and I love this because the problem is like that works really, really well for the people that want to come spend 3 days with me. But if there's just somebody at the club that came in there hit balls, you can't do that with them. But what you can do is you say, forget about, I'm not going to try to get them to see the forest. I'm not going to overwhelm them. I'm not going to sit there and try to get them to do some deep dive. But what I'm going to do is I know what trees they need. So I'm just going to pick one tree that I know that they're going to need. And I'm just going to show it to them and we're going to do it for an hour. and then what happens is you're just going to give them that tree. And then day after day, week after week, one tree at a time, you're going to arm them with better trees. And then one day they're going to wake up and see that they have a forest and their game looks different. But they don't have to see the big picture. They don't have to have some big roadmap because you don't have those resources. You've got half an hour of their time, and they're not that's not what they're doing. So you're giving them one tree at a time. When I do the boot camp, it's a boot camp for a reason, which is I'm trying to show them a bigger picture and make a lot of progress very rapidly. There's not, in a dream world, I'd love to boot camp with somebody and then have them, hang out at our club every day and keep practicing it and perfecting it. You know what I mean? But like in the end, it's like there's different strategies depending on the time you have. And so when you have an hour with a guy, that's the perfect thing to do. But for people that are at an advanced level that are looking to make progress in their game, I believe in my boot camps. It's just, that's forest of the trees. That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah. And I just have a follow-up thought down. This thing's a stinking infomercial for the club. I'm sorry, but we're up to our eyeballs in it. But it has to do with training, and it should resonate even if you're not a member or if you're in a different part of the country, whatever. I feel like the thing that I want to do, them, as being an owner of the club and a teacher at the club, I want to give everybody the tools, and I want to show them what to do and how to train and what to train. And then if they train, awesome, they will get better, they will improve. All their hopes and dreams with pool will come. We'll start working towards the. I'm serious, man. I just believe it. You put in the work, you get the as Brian Brecky once said, input equals output. So as you like to say, Dan, input equals output. So I want to show them what to input and how to input, and then I want to let them go and just see if they do it. But I passionately want to show them and give them the tools and the opportunity and the support and the love and the encouragement. And then it's up to them to keep going. It's like, that's it, man. I just want to give everyone the opportunity. And then as a business owner or as a club owner or whatever, if we do that, which you and I both do, we do it when our members come in. I see you do it when you're there playing. And when I'm there, I know I'm doing it. We're both doing it. We're giving them all the tools. And so if they come to us in 3 months and say, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I can't afford it. I'm not playing enough, whatever. I'm not getting better. Like then I can, not that they wouldn't say I'm not getting better. I don't think they'd say that, but you know what I'm saying, Dem? Like we can know that we gave them every opportunity. That's all. And that's pretty awesome to me. That's an exciting proposition or idea. That everybody that joins has a chance to get better. And we can give them a ton of those tools and direction, inspiration, and support.
Yeah, and the reason it turns into it's like we're passionate about the club, we're passionate about training. Because one thing, and I was talking, we talked about this before too, just me and you, but I wanted to share it was this idea I have about what's on your calendar. And so the idea goes.
Oh, shoot, sorry. Can I just say one more thing before we go there? Okay, I just didn't want to lose the thought or it was connected. What I was trying to say is that maybe even if after 2 months of someone being a member and being around all the training and all the things that I named off, they might realize this isn't for me. And that's okay. You know what I'm saying, Dem? Like that could be because basically we're shining a light on people's narratives and saying, okay, you've told us you want to get better. You've told us you want to get better. Now you're here, you're training. You could be training with us. You have all these tools, resources, and opportunity. And it's 2 months down the road. They might realize, you know what? I've been saying for 10 years that I want to get better. But now I just joined this club that's training and giving me all the support and encouragement and everything. And I realize, you know what? I don't want to get better. I'm going to sell my cues. It's like, that's great, because we probably just saved them 10 years of misery off their life, continuing that narrative that they want to get better.
Where they're in this cognitive dissonance where it's like, I want to get better, but it's hard. I want to get better, but it's hard. It's like, well, we're going to show them, here's what the cost is of hitting where you're saying this is your goal. Now we're going to show you this is the road that it takes. And either you're going to walk this road and you're going to get where you want to go, or you're going to realize you don't want to be on this road, in which case now at least you can say, I don't want to get better because I know what that takes and I don't want to pay that price. And at least they can get closure. They're going to get closure. You know?
Which is a huge, what I'm saying, not to even make light of it, that's a huge win. That's a huge win for them and for us. Like, if we can bring someone closure, that they stop telling themselves for 5 years how miserable they are because they can't hit a certain Fargo rate or whatever, like that is like that is priceless. If we could help them with that by if that's a result. I hope it's not the result, but for those that turned into that result, that's a priceless result, because now they have closure. They have that dissonance is out of their brain. They should be able to move forward more with confidence. You know,
well, you know, it's funny. You know what this reminds me of was when I was in corporate sales, and I this was always one of the things I used to teach sales, and I told my salespeople, they never got this. They think that when they're working with customers, they would think, well, when somebody says yes and they want to buy their product or service, well, that's good. They said yes. And when somebody says no, well, that's bad. They don't want to buy your product or service. And when somebody says, yeah, maybe, let me think about it, I don't know, give me some more time. Like when somebody says maybe, their thought process, well, it's not as good as a yes, because they didn't say yes, but they didn't say no. It's not as bad as a no. I mean, they might still buy from me. But so they thought it was better than a no and worse than a yes. But it turns out that those maybes are actually the worst of the three. Because when somebody says yes, you get to ring them up and make some money. When they say no, you get to move on and find somebody else that might say yes.
Yeah.
But when they say maybe, they take up your time and your follow-up and your attention, and you're trying to, like, you know, these are the people that have basically, a maybe has a lot in common with a no. It pays the same as a no. But so a maybe pays the same as a no, but costs as much time as a number of yeses because you keep chasing after them. So it's like these maybes are actually going to destroy your pipeline and destroy your career. And so what I used to teach salespeople is like, yeses are great, nos are fine, maybes are going to kill you. So like, I'm not saying that, you know, that doesn't mean that every time you get a maybe, I need to talk to my wife. You're going to be like, oh, I don't need to talk to my wife to sell it to you. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, understand that, like, time is money. And you know, the bottom line is with people with their pool careers, like, if you want to play. If you want to go fish, just go fish. But like this maybe stuff, nobody got time for maybe.
Yeah, exactly. And you were even talking about maybes for us as a business, like, thing. You were talking about them as a pool career too. I mean, I think you're entirely talking about that. So it's like, yeah, maybes are awful. And that's when people come in and they're maybeed out, that's where I'm like, yeah, we need to get you on a yes or no. Like, we're going to get you to where if you say yes, it's going to be awesome. And we're going to get you where if you say no, it's going to be awesome, because you're going to realize it's no more maybe. There's no more false narratives about how if you just had this or if you just had that. It's like, nope. You've gotten every imaginable opportunity and advantage and tool that we're giving. And if that's not enough, then you're going to get off that maybe train. And that's exciting in its own way. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And so I could tie back to that because I had another thought, but the thing about the calendar. So I want to spit this out because it means something to me.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Yep. I'm sorry.
So
go ahead. Yep.
My whole statement was I've worked with a lot of junior players, and there's like different paths. And the reason we get so fired up about this is because there's different paths that people can go down that just lead to totally different outcomes. And so if there are two junior players that are both 13 years old and running tables, and you want to know which of these players is going to be the one that breaks through when they're 17 and starts, you know, beating elite players out of international competitions, and which of these two players is going to be winning handicapped bar table tournaments locally. If you want to know that, if you want to know who's got the bright future, you don't have to watch them hit balls. All you have to do is look at what's on their pool calendar. Because if one of those 13-year-olds is playing in national level competition and they're entering and they're getting good mentorship and they're getting good coaching and they're getting to compete against players that are 750, 800 plus, and they're playing in, you know, they're playing in the Predator events So there's one junior player, Sam, is it Henderson, the Rhino from Iowa, where
Mm-hmm.
he's like, Josh, he's 16, he's over 700 Fargo, and
Mm-hmm.
he's playing, and the funny part is they were talking about some things, and he was saying he doesn't even play the junior events, he doesn't play like the junior nationals, he just plays pro tournaments. And I'm not, by the way, I want to be clear. Like, I love what Rahan is doing. I'm a big supporter of the JIC, the Junior International Championships, and the new Shane Van Boning, youth thing at the U.S. Open. Like, everything for the juniors is great. I'm not picking out the VNEA, the BCA, and all this, but I'm just pointing out the guy is playing pro tournaments year after year, full like every one that he can sign up for, and he's playing over 700. And then meanwhile, if you had other 13-year-olds that are like playing junior tournaments and playing in junior tournaments only, where they're only playing against kids their age and they're only playing in handicap tournaments and BC tournaments on bar tables, those roads just lead to different places. That's it. They just lead different places. And so that doesn't mean that if you're a junior player, it's not saying, oh my gosh, I should never play junior tournaments and I should only play pros because that's what this one guy did. And, he plays, pretty good right now. Like, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, though, is if you want to manage your pool career, you have to look at your calendar and say, if my pool game, if I'm feeding my pool game, what's on my calendar is the food I'm feeding it. Does this have enough vegetables? Does this have enough protein? Like, is this a healthy diet of a pool to where I'm going to be exposed to the right levels of high levels of play? I'm going to be experiencing pressure and losses. I'm going to be experiencing, I'll have some coaching sprinkled in. I'll have some play against top players sprinkled in. I'm going to have the pressure situation sprinkled in where I'm exposed. Like, does my calendar have a diet where if I look at that, I'm like, yes, this calendar, there's no way I can follow this calendar and not get where I want to go. Like, that's how you want to set your calendar up to where you look at it and say, there's simply no way I can't hit my pool goals with this calendar. And that's it. So that's it. So my bottom line is pool growth has almost more to do with what you put on your calendar than how hard you try when you get to the table. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree, Demi. Well said.
And then the other thing that kind of relates to what you're saying about the maybe and getting all in or all out, or what are we doing here? I just had something that I wanted to mention to you. I wanted to run it by you, which is I talk about, as I like to say, input equals output. And at times, you've been on and off with pool at times. My road partner, Jesse, has been on and off with pool at times. And I have pretty well stayed on pool to a certain extent, although it's not like a full-time playing. But my passion for the game my input has, I've always had some seasons or fluctuations and stuff, but like I've always put in a healthy budget of input. And so what I would say that I have done, my strategy is this. I ask myself a simple question. How much input, how much budget of time and energy and money would I put into this game with the expectation that I would get nothing back? So if I knew that I was never going to improve, if I was never going to win anything, if I was never going to beat anybody, nobody was ever going to watch, I was never going to get any applause, nobody was ever going to take my photo, nobody was ever going to tell me nice shot. If the external rewards from the game, I never won any money, if it was completely zeroed out and I never got anything from anybody, would I quit? Would I keep playing? And if I kept playing, to what extent? And my answer was kind of like, well, boy, kind of a bummer to think about it that way, but like, I don't know. I still think I'd play because I love the damn game and I'm stupid. And then how much would I play? It's like, well, I don't know if I'd play full time because I don't know if I'd give up everything in my life to play a game where I get nothing back, but I'd still like to play a handful of times a year, and I still like to practice, and I still like to, because the intrinsic value of putting in the input and the joy of having a few good sessions or a few breakthroughs and the fun of being able to go out and compete a few times now and then and know that I'm in form and I can be competitive and win a few matches just for myself, even if or whatever, like that's enough for me. And so basically I say, what am I going to put into this game if I get nothing out? And then that's how much I put into the game. And then I get almost nothing out of pool. And it's fine because I don't need anything because I didn't expect anything. And then once in a while, something cool happens, and I'm like, oh, look at that. That's gravy. And I can enjoy it, but I didn't really need it. And it's a good thing I didn't need it because it's not much. You know what I mean? Uh, and so in contrast, like I'll tell you, I think I don't want to really speak about somebody else's story, but I think Jesse's cool. Like Jesse and I were going to some tournaments together, and one of the reasons he was going is he'd seen that the Moscone Cup last year was a little bit underwhelming in some ways as far as like the prize money and from the US players that were qualifying and the level of play. And he's like, you know what? I think I could play good. I think I could give myself a run. I think I could maybe if I play a few events, I could give myself a run. It would be pretty cool if I could get in contention and maybe take a pop at that Moscone Cup. But the problem with that was that he did some really good things. He went to Derby. He had a great tournament. I mean, he beat Oscar Dominguez Hill. Then he beat Roberto Gomez 9-7. And then he had Shaw down like 8-5. And then Shaw ran a bunch of racks on him and came back. But it's like Shaw beat him 9-8. But like, I mean, and then that was on top of winning his first like 5 out of 6. So like he made it pretty deep and he had a good run. And he's playing great pool, man. And I was watching him. And then he went to some tournaments. And it's like he went out to like the East Coast and had a Hill loss to Max Eberly. And then he had like some loss to some guy from another country that ran a bunch of racks on him. And it's like, after a few tournaments, he kind of was like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to keep chasing around right now because it's just like, it's tough, man. It's tough out there and it's hard to get much output. And so the bottom line, my point is I got to talking to him and our conversations because we're road partners and he's explaining to me why he's not going to be going to a lot of tournaments with me. And it basically came down to like, so why was he going to a lot of tournaments? Is because he was thinking he could maybe do something with pool and maybe make the Moscone Cup or maybe have some breakthroughs or maybe do something. And then when he kind of realized that wasn't going to happen, or it certainly wasn't in his budget of time and energy to chase around that much, he kind of lost interest because it's like, so he wasn't playing because of the input. He was playing because he was hoping to get something out. And once he realized he wasn't going to get something out, it didn't make sense anymore. And so in the end, that doesn't mean he's not playing again. But now I think Jesse's kind of on the same page I am, which is if I knew I wasn't going to get anything out, how often would I play just for the fun of it? And the answer is sometimes, but not full time. You know what I mean? So what are your thoughts on that?
No, that has been a huge full circle thing for me and a big process of getting on where you're at. Because I did quit, I don't know, a little bit over a year ago, I sold my table. I kept my cues, but because I thought I'd hit balls again, quote unquote, but I came back to it and I literally, you were talking and I was thinking about how I approach the game in that manner. And I'm like, people have been asking me, they're like, what do you got going on? What's coming up? And I'm just like, I don't know. I don't, because I don't need anything. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so to answer your question, how much would I play if I didn't get anything out of the game? Every day I would. I'm enjoying hitting balls and practicing and learning and just training. It's just part of my DNA. It's part of what I like. It's like I just like it, and so I love the process. I just love it. And so I would play every day at least a little bit, probably an hour to 2 hours, and then I'd hit balls with people that I like hitting balls with, and then go from there. If I feel like I got a match, I might play pancake. It's like a long race. It's like, yeah, that's fun. That's interesting. And then I might wake up one day and be like, there's Iowa's coming in July, in the middle of July. It starts on like a Thursday or something. I might wake up on Wednesday and be like, I feel like going, So it's like I'm super loose with all this stuff. But the bottom line is I love playing every day and practicing every day. Now that I've got the club tucked in better and rolling, I can do that more. And so now I'm in my happy place again. So I trained with Andy today for an hour and a half and just did some stuff. And I just every day, man, that's my answer. So
yeah. And
on the horizon.
Yeah. And so, and if the question is like, what external output have you gotten from that? The answer is none. I mean, that doesn't mean, now I'm not saying you haven't gotten better, that you're not sharp on your game, or that you haven't had people compliment you, or like there is output we're getting. And even being like, being around our club and having, being, there's a certain role we get to play as being like big fish in the small pond and being kind of like admired or, respected, or certain things that, I mean, we probably get output that we don't even know we get, but part of the reason we don't even know we get it is because we don't really need it. We're not like desperate and feeding on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. I mean, yeah. And that's part of the whole growth process for me by, mnpoolbootcamp.com, mental training for 15 years with you, is like, you institutionalize me. I mean, I'm not just, no, but I'm just like, I don't need that, man. It's like, I was a bleeding mess of need for my entire life. And now I finally don't need it. And I just do things because I enjoy them. I'm happy and I'm content, and I'm, with what I got and what I had. And I'm still grinding. Like I'm still working my butt off. I'm still getting up every day and trying to get better. But I just, it's like it's not part of my thing. I'm not so bleeding needy, which I'm happy about,
This is something that's been on my mind too, is like we were talking about, like, kind of looking around and just seeing, I took off the filter of who I work with, and I'm just kind of seeing the people at the club, but I'm also seeing like people I'm talking to in the mental game, and just little things I'm picking up that are very subtle. But what I've realized, Josh, is that there's a lot of people that are just in the world. There's a lot of people in the world that are just bleeding with need for validation. And I'll give you some examples. Is like on AZ Billiards, somebody could write a post about something, and then like people respond on these posts in ways where it's like they just want to present themselves as like important, or as knowledgeable, or as expert, or dropping names, or dropping what they've done on other areas of their life, or or somehow they just kind of get these like pissing contests, or people that are like just really, really, really desperate to like be winners and be admired and be like the or the way they present on social media or different things. And listen, it's funny because not every social media post is an attention grab, and not every name drop is an attention grab. Like sometimes you live a life where it just so happens that it's like that just so happens that my life is such that this is Tuesday for me, and that's fine. But you know what I'm talking. There's like a lot of people that are just but underlying all of it is like somehow people feel insufficient, and they feel they're hard on themselves, they're critical on themselves, and they feel disappointed or insignificant or insufficient, and then they're just like, they need the approval and admiration of others to like make up for the fact that they don't feel enough. They don't feel whole. And I see this leak out into people, into the things they do and say and write, and how they, play. And a lot of mental game problems are caused by this too. And so I guess I just want to tell people, like, and so I almost feel like the pool culture in general has set up a culture where it's like we're going to get tens of thousands of people together in these rooms with pool tables, and we're going to all agree that there's this currency of pool skill, and that the people that have this currency are winners, and that they're valuable and important, and they are to be admired, and they are significant, and they are special, and they are superior. And then what we're going to do is we're going to fight each other on this pool table over these, competence points or whatever, and these Fargo points. And then the people that win more of them, those guys are going to be admired and looked up to and applauded and taken pictures of. And so I don't like how I am and who I feel like I am, and how little I've accomplished in my life, and how mortal and insignificant I am. So how I'm going to solve that problem is I'm going to work really hard to develop this pool game where I beat other people and move my Fargo rate up and get my picture taken. And then other people will then I'll be in the winner's circle, and I'll get my share of admiration and approval. And then everything will be great. And that the problem is that, and then the problem is that people play what they think is a zero sum game where the reason why you play a great set on somebody, and instead of telling you good shooting, they're like, well, I would have won if I had missed that ball, or, I'm sorry, I couldn't give you more of a game or something like that. And you're like, man, I played a great set. Why aren't they giving me a compliment? But it's like, they can't, because they think that if they compliment you, that they think that when you win, that means that they lose, and that means that they have to go look in the mirror and wonder why they're so terrible and so awful. And I see the cycle that people are caught up in, and this is one of the things where I think mental game is important. But anyway, I just want to tell everybody, none of it's real, none of it's true. Like, Fargo points and competence points is this is an arbitrary game with an arbitrary skill that's made up. It's like you go to a desert island with a pool table. The ability to run balls won't feed you. There's nothing. I mean, yes, you're demonstrating some discipline and some competence by learning and all these things, but I'm just saying, like, it's a made up skill, and people that have learned the skill have put in more time and sacrifice than people that haven't. And it doesn't make them better players, and it doesn't make them better people. And that having other people take your picture doesn't change who you are. And the fact that nobody's taking your picture because you haven't run 1,000 balls in straight pool doesn't mean that you're any less. That we're all human. We're all going to live these flash in the pan lives, and we're all going to die. We're all going to suffer. We're all going to love. We're all going to have this experience, and that it's all okay, and that everything's okay, and that there's nothing wrong with anybody, and that there's no problem that needs to be solved. And if there was, playing better pool wouldn't solve anything, which is okay, because there is no problem to be solved, because everything's okay. It's okay. You're okay how you are. You're okay with who you are. You're okay with how you play. Have fun. And yes, it's fun to get better, and we should use our time with purpose and intention, and that's great. But do it because it's fun, not because you think that there's a problem. That's all. That's all I got.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. And we talk about process all the time, but it's like, if you don't enjoy the process, like, someone was talking to me the other day, and I was just thinking, if you're not having fun, it's just not going, it's not being done right. You have to enjoy it. Otherwise, something needs to get fixed. So that's it. And then you'd go to Dem and do his mental game class. And it would be
the only thing standing between you and Nirvana is a small tuition fee to MN Pool Boot Camp. So
exactly. Total consciousness. I've got your fingertips.
That's right. Enlightenment, man. I've got enlightenment. Enlightenment oil.
That's right. Exactly.
I'll tell you what.
It's like, no, we have to come up with some sort of system for enlightenment so we can, like, sell it on to people, like a naming system.
Yeah. It's like center to enlightenment. C to E.
Perfect enlightenment.
Oh, God damn it.
Oh, edit it out.
That's coming out. Okay, Josh. Okay. Let's back to our regularly scheduled program. Okay. So, Josh, one thing happened yesterday that I had a funny experience, and I think it's just very relatable to everybody that's listening. I had a guy, we were talking about a club. I had a guy come in to check the place out, and he's actually going to be doing one of those clinics with us. And so that's pretty cool. But he wanted to, while he was in, he's like, hey, let's play a little bit. So I'm like, sure. So I got to know him a little bit. And anyway, it's not, the details of his life aren't relevant to the story, but needless to say, he's, like many players, he played pool off and on his whole life, but very passively. And then, like, just a couple of years ago, he started getting he got the pool bug, right? So he joined an APA league and kind of started playing. And so I had no idea. Like, all I knew about the guy, Josh, is he's been playing pool since COVID, and he's playing APA, and he's got a bug. And so with that little bit of information, it's kind of like when you go to the table, you just don't really, like, there's a wide range of how it could work out. You know what I mean? Like, you just don't know what to expect, really. Like, he could be like watching videos and learning on his own and like playing really, really well, or he could just be playing like one ball at a time, looking around, hunting pack. You just don't really know what you're going to get. And then meanwhile, like, I'm putting him on this 4 1/4 inch 9-foot diamond, and I'm like, this could be a total disaster. So we rack up the balls, and he wants to play 8 ball. I'm like, sure. So we start playing 8 ball, and eight ball on a 9 foot diamond with tight pockets is kind of a trap because you know how eight ball is. If you run like six balls and don't get out, then if you're playing against somebody who's like a thinking player, it can like roll behind balls. Like it can make things
Yeah.
very unpleasant because those 4 and a quarter inch pockets cut both ways. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
that's what happens. Like he breaks, he comes up dry. I start trying to run out, and it's just too many problem balls, and I can't get out. And maybe I was being a little ambitious because I mean, we're just kind of hitting balls my first rack. I'm figuring, this should be no problem. Well, anyway, I get down to a couple balls and it's no good. Like I get down to a ball or something and it's no good. And so I miss, and he starts he's a pretty straight shooter. He starts pocketing balls, and you've seen it happen where when people like play on really tight equipment, but they don't know how tight it is, sometimes they just shoot everything in the hole. And
Hmm.
anyway, he starts doing, he's a straight shooter. And I don't mean like a straight shooter like Filler. I just mean like for what you would think from a guy that's been playing ABA a couple of years. Like the guy just started coming in and shooting all these balls in. And it's great to see because like he was just hulked out and in the moment and super engaged. Like it was just this I guess there's a few funny things that were going on. And so one of the things was I was just like totally inspired because I realized, Josh, that I've got many years of looking at shots and kind of like, oh, that's a tough shot, or that's a 50% shot, or that's a 60% shot. And or that shot's not even a shot. You know what I mean? Like that's just impossible, or
Yeah.
that's a shot you don't go for. And I realized he doesn't have any of those thoughts. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so there was a couple times where like at one point I had to play a safety with my last ball because he missed and I had no shot. So I left him, Josh. What if you showed it to me? I would consider it no shot. Like it wasn't a tough shot. It wasn't a very difficult shot. It wasn't a lower percentage shot. It was just in my mind, like my mind didn't even recognize it as a shot because it was just something that like I would probably three rail kick at the ball before I would even like it just under no circumstances in any pool game would I ever look at the shot. Like the ball was, I left him in the corner pocket jaws, and on the other end of the table, on the same, there was like a ball, like basically he's 9.5 feet away, and the ball was near the corner, and he'd have to cut it along the end rail like 3 diamonds to the other corner pocket, where he'd have to be shooting from the jaws, table length, near break speed to shave the edge of a ball that he was almost hooked on to run it like 80 degrees sideways across the end rail. You know what I mean? And like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's like I looked at this and I'm like, man, I kick at this ball. I could tie something up. Like I was just looking at it like there, I see all these other options. And then the guy gets down and he just starts aiming at the edge of the ball because in his mind, it's like, well, I could see the edge of the ball. And if I hit it really thin, it might go that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 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 Go towards the pocket.
And he got down and he waffled this ball and it trickled along the end rail and it hung up. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like much, like it didn't go, but it's like for that ball, for him to get that ball in the jaws of that pocket was like maybe the most incredible shot I've seen this year. So it's like it was so, and he was deep in the jaws, like elevated out of the jaws, spearing 10 feet away. It was unbelievable. And so then all of a sudden he's got his ball hanging in the jaws. There's just really hard for me to defend against. And so long story short, he ends up making it and missing the eight. And so he leaves the eight on the end rail. And I have to play safe. I still don't have a shot at my damn ball. And it's like, and so I leave him on the end rail again, like end rail to end rail. So just for the ease of it, I'm just going to say he's on the middle of the end rail and the eight ball's on the opposite end rail, like not quite frozen to the first diamond on the opposite end rail. And it's like frozen on the nameplate, shooting 9.5 feet away, edging the ball, end rail to end rail. Like, and he just gets down and smokes the edge of the ball. The cue ball's bouncing up on the table, and the eight ball trickles over and falls in. And I'm just like, and there was a few things that I just kind of hit me all at once. And so the first thing, and I think that this is very relatable because like, first thing was I was like dying inside. Like I'm trying to play safe on this guy. And I feel like this guy, he's here. So there's a few points. So the first point is that pool is a game where in the long term, of course, averages and percentages and nobody can just be magic forever. But in the here and now, in this one moment, on this one shot. It doesn't matter if this guy is an APA 3 or 4 or 5 or 9. In this one moment, anybody on the planet that plays pool could just be present and be focused and just be like, I am going to send that ball in the hole. And for one shot, anybody can play like filler for one shot. You know what I mean? And meanwhile, no matter how good I am or how good filler is, we can play like an APA 3 that dogs it for one shot. You know what I mean? And so if I play a rack of pool where I dog it and then he gets up there and pockets the ball, it's like, this is obvious, right? Like if I miss it, he makes it, he wins. But like the point is, it doesn't matter what the skill gap is, because the point is that there is no skill gap, and there's no amount of knowledge, and there's no amount of hard work, and there's no amount of talent, and there's nothing you can do in your hours of practice and your years of study and your years of experience that can substitute being in the present, being engaged, and bringing your game. And doesn't matter how smart you think you are, how good you think you are, if you fail to bring your game in the moment and dog it, it doesn't matter how inexperienced somebody else is or how limited their practice is. If they do, they can make the ball. And then if they do that, they will win the game. You know what I mean? What are your thoughts on that? I've been going for a while. You understand where I'm going?
I mean, 100%. I mean, shoot, man, we were out in Turning Stone, and I watched a 750 lose to a 630, and I was like, huh? I mean, but it was like a race to 9 or whatever was out there, and I'm just like, deep in the tournament, like in the money rounds, and I was just like, wow, like, and I've lost big gaps like that in money matches and everything, so it's like I understand intimately like what you're talking about, and especially for one game, like for sure, but I've seen it play out over longer sessions. Even it's an amazing game in that way. Like that's what I think the beauty of the game is, the fun of the game, and that's the torture of the game, and that's it, man. It's so cool, and that's a great story, and that's a great lesson to learn and for people to understand, and it's a great learning moment. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. The other thing that kind of hit me was like, I was like, the funniest part is like I was dying. Like I was dying as he's finding ways to make these balls, and as he's going from being, as he's going and pocketing these balls and coming with these shots and finding ways to send these balls in pockets. And then I mean, I'm sitting there like I felt like I was dying. And then I'm like, I had to remind myself, like, first of all, I mean, like we're playing it's a game for fun. Like we're playing a fun rag of 8 ball. Like I'm not dying. Everything's okay. And I know that even if we were playing, even if it was $1,000 match or something, like even still, it's totally fine. Like I've never had a game of pool where the consequences actually really mattered. You know what I mean? But like in my mind and in my, like, it's like, I forget that.
Matters deeply.
Yeah. And so it's like, I think that's the other thing. It's like every time you play pool, it doesn't matter. That's like, you couldn't set it up anymore. Like I'm a really strong player bringing in an amateur on the really trapped out tables, and we're playing for fun. And it's like, I'm potentially losing one rack of pool. And yet it feels like well, it's all over for me.
It's a career ender.
I guess it was a good run.
Yeah, it was a good run. Exactly.
And it's like, that just goes to show that, like, no matter how far you go, like, it's always hard to lose, man.
Yeah. You know what, Demi? Like, the one other thing I'd say that's been on my mind that we haven't really discussed at all, but I've been thinking about it is, this is a little bit of a side, not a tangent, but a side street. So the thing that you're talking about, dying inside, we could do a separate pod on it, of course, or discussion, but like I think like I try to figure out, like, why do I understand pool the way I understand pool, and it's in competitive pool and everything, down is because I've died thousands of times. I've been in my car hundreds of times, like feeling like I've died, and trying to put myself back together, and that is something that when you talk about potential, like there's young players that we work with and train and everything, and it's like, well, how far can they go? And it's like, well, they can go as far as how many times they can die and come back to life. I mean, that's a little bit nebulous, but that's what I feel like. It's like how like that's what pool is, you know, and that's the beauty of pool. Like I was passionately talking to a potential member today, and I was saying basically the challenge of pool is the beauty of pool, and being in such a position that it means so much to you, and either you fail or you succeed, and either way it's just such a wonderful character building process and such a cool thing. But I think that dying inside, the way you felt playing that APA guy in that one game, I have felt that way like thousands of times, Demi, because I've been playing for 30 years. And I just think that that is the cool part of pool, but it's also the gritty part that you know, people that are at 600 that say I want to go to 700. I would just suggest that, and bring out the point that be prepared to die thousands of deaths, you know, hundreds if not thousands of deaths over that journey from 6 to 7 or from 5 to 6 or whatever, you know. Anyways, what do you think about that?
So yeah, 100% agreed. And so I've got there's like it's almost like there's like 10 different ways. There's 10 different zoomed levels that we could talk about this at. Like on a high level, like what you just said is perfect. And I've said it, the way I've talked about it at a high level is like pool is about collecting losses. Like it's not about like it's about putting an input, and it's about collecting losses. And that people are, but then one more, if you zoom in one more level, or maybe it's a little more level, it's like, what is actually dying? And trust me, I'm not going down this hole right now, but it's like, really, it's in a way, it's the ego that's dying. It's this, we build a mirage of who we think we are. And then when that illusion is popped, when that fantasy is popped, that is what we feel like is the death. But then what happens is that then it turns out that after that's popped and it feels like death, but then you look in the mirror and you realize I'm still here. Well, then, you know what it is, Josh? Here's a great example is the rubber hand. Have you ever seen that rubber hand psychology trick?
Mm-mm.
Okay, this is really cool. They have somebody hold their hand out. Like, I don't know exactly. Like they have one person hold out their hand behind this barrier, but then they have a rubber hand. So basically they can't see their hand. All they can see is this rubber hand. And it's like a artificial hand. And what happens is there's a person with a feather that's rubbing the feather back and forth on this rubber hand. But then there's another person with a feather rubbing a feather back and forth on the person's real hand, so that they're watching this fake hand being feather tickled or feather rubbed, but then they're feeling the feather rub on their hand because somebody's actually doing that to their hand behind this barrier as well. So they're staring at the fake hand, but they're feeling a sensation that's similar to what they're watching on the fake hand. I don't know if that makes any sense. But what happens is they start to feel like that hand is theirs. Okay.
Oh, really? Okay.
And then somebody takes out of nowhere, they smash it with a hammer. They take a hammer and smash the rubber hand, and the person's like, ah, and they feel like this intense, like there's just like a horrible sensation because they thought that was crazy. Their hand. Like that's like they've actually like formed some neural connection with that hand. It's like the best thing ever. So anyway, it's like that's what happens. We have these illusions of who we think we are, and then we actually attach to them like it's our life. And then kind of the same way if you're playing a video game and you're like, oh, I died. And in that moment, you're like, oh, no, I died. And then you're like, oh, wait, it's a video game character. It's fine. Like we get attached. And so anyway, the funny part is like, what is it that we're attached to? And we're attached of this. We have this desire that we're going to transcend this game, or that we're going to transcend. Like we think like every time we play pool, it's about suffering and input and struggle and failure and dying these little deaths. And dying these deaths of these, and all of our dreams are, well, maybe I could work hard enough, and maybe this will be the time I could become the player that doesn't have to die the death. And we keep wanting to not have to die the deaths. And so what's actually dying is this belief that, well, maybe I don't have to die anymore. Maybe I've died enough in the past where it's smooth sailing from here on out. And then it's like every time we start thinking that way, it's time that we have to be reminded. And it's like the game has to keep, because every time we feel that way, it's like the game is going to remind us that that's not how it works. And so it's funny because then we're dying these little deaths, of thinking we don't have to die these little deaths. And it gets a little weird, and I maybe got a little bit rabbit holed, but the point is it's very, very funny. And so, yes, bottom line is it's like dying little deaths and loss is like the fire that burns away the bullshit and leaves you with the reality, which is we're just people doing our best at a difficult game. And everything beyond that is kind of like make believe. So let's just do our best to put in the input and have fun with how hard it is. And anything beyond that, anything that we think we are doing or are going to do beyond that is just a fantasy that's probably going to cause another little death here in a minute to remind you. I don't know. So yeah. I'm just agreeing with you. I'm trying to agree with you. Yeah, that was my way of saying good call. Okay, so and Josh, when we're talking about like things that we see players do, one thing that kind of stood out to me was I was really surprised at how much players are sometimes trying to do when they play pool. And like I was watching some situations where it looked like kind of really routine and really basic and just kind of like basically just keep it simple and stay out of trouble. You know, don't get straight, don't get frozen on the rail, don't put yourself over the ball. Like basically just don't scratch, like just don't leave yourself like in the jaws of the pocket where you can't bridge and just try not to get horribly out of line and just keep calm and do simple things. And it looks like these last 3 balls are kind of undoggable. And then I'd see people like kind of go to fancy town and like load up with draw or hit something with force or try to load it up with a bunch of spin. And I would just like, I would see the choices that people made and they're launching their cue ball around the table and using these power shots and using all this stuff. And they're finding ways to get funny and land funny or rattle balls or freeze the ball and overrun their shape. And I just, all I can say, Josh, is like, you know, like in Shawshank Redemption, when Brooks got released and he was walking around and almost getting run over by cars. And he was like, man, everyone got themselves in a big damn hurry. Like, I feel like I was watching people play pool and I'm just like, man, like everybody's just like, they're just my sense. It was like a culture shock where I'm like, everyone's trying to do way too much here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I got you. Yeah, it's hard, man. It's hard, Dem. It's like it's hard to. It just takes a lot of. I don't know. It's cool because, you know, I was watching someone break the balls tonight, and they were breaking so hard, and they were loading up so hard, and you and I have put in so much work in the breakdown, and it's like it's a shot. It's a pop. It's a shot 10 ball, and it's done at 20 miles per hour, and I was just watching, and it was like hitting them at just like warp speed with no cue ball control. And I'm not making fun or picking on them. I'm just noticing. I'm playing in the next table, and I'm just like that has like the motivation for it. You could speculate on it, right? But it's like maybe people just do things the way they think it should be done, and I don't know, man. It's like it's perplexing, but it's also it's pool, man. It's like I've done the same stuff, bro. It's like I've played and been out of the moment and shooting shots for reasons that have nothing to do with how to successfully execute the shot. I've done it for my entire career, so it's like I'm not it's like I'm guilty of the same stuff. It's just, it's like we're in a training facility, we're around people, we're very close to them, we're watching everything they're doing, and it's like it's just going to be a bit by bit thing to work with people and try to change that culture to do what's effective and do it simple. I guess I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah. So a couple things. So like on the break thing, for sure. Like I did this for 20 years. What happened is I'd look at the results that the top breakers were getting, and I'm like, ooh, for me to get that result, I would have to like tense every muscle in my body and lunge. And I didn't realize that they're just not doing what I'm doing physically, and that there's other ways of doing it to generate timing and length and power, or timing and speed and length as opposed to power and muscle. And so I just didn't understand it. And so anyway, so that's of course fine. But then even with the pool game, like even if somebody's like, okay, so I'm supposed to try to do less. That's like telling people, like it's like telling a beginner that's leaving themselves way too many tough shots. Like, hey man, you got to leave yourself easier shots. It's like, yeah, well, How? Well, that's a long story. That's multiple year journey of learning and trial. And so the same
Yeah.
way, I'm not watching, it's not, instead of measuring the difficulty of their shots, I'm measuring the difficulty of what they're doing to get where they're going. And it's like, man, they're getting flat angles. They're using way too much power. They're using way too much draw. They're really they're unleashing the cue ball in a lot of ways, a lot of times where I'm just like,
Yeah.
it's like, it's pretty wild. Like it just looks kind of wild and a little bit abrasive and shocking at times. But I realized, like, okay, so if the listener's like, well, how do I not do that? I don't want to do that. Well, it's like, well, I mean, of course I have an answer, but that answer is like, let's work together and over years of play and lots of study and trial. And,
Yeah.
it's like, it's a journey. It's not an answer. But what I can tell you is the direction to go. So here's what I can say. I've kind of saying it this way now, and this is a lot of what I teach too, but it's like the first half of your journey is about arming yourself with more and more and more tools. You learn how to bank balls, you learn how to make long shots, you learn how to draw the cue ball, you learn how to spin the cue ball, you learn multiple rail maneuvers, and you learn some fancy stuff with some hooks and some bends and some kills and some, you just got to arm yourself with all these amazing powerhouse weapons. And then the second half of your pool journey is learning to put those away and not use them. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's almost like you got to learn them all, and then you try to use less and less and less of those, and go back to the stuff you knew how to do on day one. And it's hard to do. And it's like I can teach it. And this is so when I work with people, if they're in the first half, I'm working with them to arm their toolbox. And then when I work with the really advanced players that have been plateaued for years, it's like, no, the reason you're not getting better is because there's limits to how consistent you can perform when you're using a lot of wild shots every rack. So you have to, even though you have those tools, like you may have 10 tools, you may have 50 tools in your toolbox, but that's what my whole approach is with my core shots. It's like, these are the 10 core shots I use. Here are 10 shots that are actually consistent and repeatable and controllable. So now I'm going to take away the rest of your tools, and you can only play pool with, it's almost like those things where if a guy plays with center ball and he wipes the chalk off and he can't use any side spin for a practice session or two, and then he starts hitting the balls really good. It's like, it's kind of like that. It's like I kind of manually take away a bunch of their tools and force them to play with simple tools, and then look at how that changes your patterns of decision making, and all of a sudden, boom, they start playing better. So anyway, the point is, easier said than done. But first, you got to arm yourself with a bunch of tools, and then you got to put them away.
Yeah. And then the only thing I'd add, Demi, is that the thing I've been talking to people about a lot is minimum necessary force. And so I'm explaining the stroke, and I'm explaining the strike, and explaining, side by side when working with people about minimum necessary force. And so you want to get the most out of your shot with the least amount of force into the shot, and sort of have that mindset. And that's how people start realizing, okay, now I can roll the ball and get to where I want to be, instead of like stunning the ball or drawing the ball or pounding the ball. Or if I'm hitting a draw shot, if I get my tip very, very accurately and I accelerate through, I can use way less force and get way more draw. And it's way more controllable, and it's way more accurate. And it's, less pokey and lungy. And so anyways, I think
I think minimum necessary force is practically my religion. And you know this about me. It's like 100% agree. And it's funny, like a lot of times I say people are stroking about 4 times too fast because they're using twice as much cue force as they need to get, if they had good timing, to get to, because they're only getting half their cue speed into the cue ball because their timing is off, and they're using too much muscle, and then they're if they want a speed 5, they're swinging at a speed 10. And then the funny part is that they're generating a speed 5 when if they use the lower tip position and finesse the ball a little bit better with a little bit better tip accuracy, they might only need a speed 2.5 or 3. So it's like their tip is not low enough on their low balls, so then they're having to make up for it with excess force, and then they're having to generate twice the cue speed they need to get that excess force. So now they're 4 times faster than they need to be, and then all of that can be avoided if they got an angle where they can roll the ball. They don't even need to keep it sliding. So it's like it might be 8 times too fast. So it's levels and levels. So in the end, all I can think about is like Bruce Lee and the 1-inch punch. And I think about like martial artists, and I think about how I like to say it this way. Pool is not a game of sculpting where you're adding and adding and adding stuff to your game. Pool is a game of whittling, where you're like trying to carve out more and more crap and just get to that minimum skeletal, like what's the least we could do? And to me, that's one of the beautiful parts about pool is looking at a tough table with tough shots and tough layouts and blockers and short sides and difficulty and finding solutions that are not only solving it and not only solving it beautifully, but solving it simply and like with just like a little nudge and a little finesse and the right angle and the right speed and the right nudge. And like Brian Brecky says, you pick the lock. Or and Buddy Hall used to say, when you're in a tough spot, look to do something simple. And so being able to look at a really difficult, messy situation and then simple your way through it is like one of the greatest joys in pool, I think.
Yeah. Hey, do you want to transition to that 3-ball safety story?
You know what? It's actually funny. I was thinking about that. I was talking with you about this earlier. So this is exactly a great example of like unbelievable. I love this. It's one of my favorites. Go ahead, Josh.
Okay, this is about like simple. So I was playing a guy. We were on a very tight diamond table. It was the middle of summer. It was really muggy. It was gnarly. It's just a tight, gnarly table. And so the guy I was playing was a very good player. You know, he's I don't know, he was mid 600 Fargo player. And we were playing a set. We got down and the 7-8-9 were on the table. And so he plays like this safety. Whether he played, I don't remember exactly what happened, Demi. He might have played a safety or got lucky to get me there, whatever, it doesn't matter. I was in trouble. Like I had 3 balls on a table. It was a very pressure point in the set, and it was close, whatever. And I just
to be clear, I'm looking at it from the point of view of people listening. So just to be clear, the 7-8-9 are on the table. Let's just say it's like 5-5 in a race to 7 or something, where it's like a critical turning point in the set. And there's the 7-8-9 is on the table playing 9-ball, and you're just welded such that you can't possibly hit the 7.
Yeah, I can't possibly hit the 7. Yep, true.
Or it would be really tough. It would be really tough.
It'd be really tough, or I'd have to get. Yeah, it would be almost impossible with the 7 if I hit it. It's the balls are laying such that like I'd have to get really lucky from there. So what I did was I was like frozen, really close to frozen on the 8. So I looked at it and I said, well, if I just push the 8 up table, away from the 7, and then the 8 is away from the 9. If I just push this, and I could give them an open rack with the 7 ball on the side rail, the 8 on the end rail, and the 9 on the end rail, I could do that. I could push that 8 and get it in that position, and then I can just pick up the ball and stare at him and challenge him to run 3 balls with ball in hand. Because I felt like there was additional pressure by taking the intentional foul and just sort of like, pushing the balls up.
So let me just kind of bring some people up to speed here. So in 9-ball, obviously, if you don't hit the lowest ball, the other guy gets ball in hand. And so generally speaking, when you're hooked, you try to kick and hit the lowest ball. But sometimes if you don't really think you have much equity making that hit, then you can look at taking an intentional foul. And generally when this happens is you take an intentional foul where maybe you can roll the 8 ball against the 9 so that the 8-9 are tied up on the rail. And now all of a sudden he's going to have to break open the cluster or play some kind of a safety, and you might get a better opportunity. So most of the time, you rarely see pros take intentional fouls because they kick well enough that they can hit a lot of balls. And if they give up ball in hand to their opponent's like a world-class professional who's going to use that ball in hand very successfully a lot of the time. So you rarely see ball in hand given up intentionally. And when you do, it's usually to like create like a stone locked up problem for the other person. But what Josh did instead was there was no way to like lock anything up so it didn't go. But the 9-ball might have been in the rack area. And as it was laying, like the 7-8-9 was just hanging. So he just drove the 8 up table to the head rail, where it's like, well, now you're going to have to make the 7, get up to the head rail, make the 8, and then get back down here for the 9 on the rack area. And I'm going to give you the cue ball. You're going to have ball in hand. Now, you can sit there and say, well, he's a good player. He's like a 650 plus Fargo, and it's a 3-ball run with ball in hand. Like, why would you give a ball in hand? Of course he's going to run those balls. But it's like the truth was that in that moment, there's a better chance that he's going to take ball in hand and just make a mistake. Like here's Josh's best chance of winning was like, just give the guy a chance to make a mistake. Because if you kick away at the 7 and miss it or even clip it and sell it, like nothing was going to happen. So, and then what you're saying is not only is there a chance he'll make a mistake, it almost is like a little, it's not a shark move, but it's almost like a little bit weird to give the guy a ball in hand there because nobody else would do that. So then he's, like you said, he's sitting there with ball in hand and you're staring at him and you're just like, yeah, go ahead. And all of a sudden he's just like, what's he thinking? He's like, yeah.
Like I was thinking exactly that. I'm like, let's see you run these 3 balls. Can you run 3 balls? Let me see. You know?
And so, of course, so his thought process, I know what he's thinking. He's like, why would you do that? That's stupid. You just gave me ball in hand with 3 balls on the table. Obviously, I'm a good player. I can easily run these 3 balls. That's like the stupidest play ever. Well, now, I mean, I have to teach you a lesson and I have to punish you for that. I need to run these 3 balls. And then, I mean, that would be like horrible. Like I'm gonna for sure run these, right? It would be horrible if I didn't, but like I got this, right? Well, that's a little funny. I didn't mean to quite get there. Well, what the and it's just like they're kind of like spooked out of the moment, like what's going on? Like, yeah.
Yeah. He literally couldn't get on the 8 ball. Like he didn't get on the 8 ball correctly because you had to have an angle to be on the 8 to get back to the 9. And on a super tight table, he left too much of an angle. He jarred the 8 and I won the game. It was like, it was just funny, man.
Yeah, and I can totally see it. So, and to be fair, you did nothing unsportsmanlike to shark him. Like you didn't shark him, nothing. but you did something that you did something so unexpected that he sharked himself. And then at the same time, you created you created a situation where there was just enough physical adversity that something could go wrong and just enough mental adversity to where it could fan the flames of the physical adversity. And just in that moment, you just felt like, I don't care if it's 5-5, like, he's going to have to earn it. He's going to have to show me that he can do what it takes right now on this inning, on this tight table to get these 3 balls done when I challenge him and handle the cue ball. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's a hilarious. It's one of my favorite stories. It's because it's such an unorthodox thing to do. And there's probably a lot of purists that are like, well, that's not the right shot. But like, I don't know, man, if you're in the here and now and you get a read that like, it's kind of like making an exploitative poker call where it's like all the books say you're not supposed to call here, but you just feel like the guy is, not holding it, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, it's anyway. Like it's almost like it's cool because it's like tight equipment in with gritty balls and summer conditions or whatever. It's like that. I feel like, and you have to have the proper angle and everything to go from one ball to the next. It's just. Yeah, it's 3 balls, but it's not as easy as it looks. So it was cool.
And it's what I think it relates to is it's a simple thing to do, and it's like something that I the funny part is that like I like top players. I say they don't give up ball in hand often intentionally, but middle rated players give up ball in hand intentionally even less because it's like they try to make these Z kicks and these low percentage Hail Marys where it's like. Do something you can do and make them earn it sometimes, and yep. Mm-hmm. And that kind of relates to like the only other thing that was on my mind was like I've seen a lot of easy shots missed the last week and everybody misses easy shots. And so I'm not saying like if you miss easy shots, like shame on you, that's what's wrong and you got to stop doing that. Like, no, everyone's going to miss easy shots. But I've seen some things where like people are really losing focus and missing easy shots frequently. So I was working with a student and long story short, he ran through this pattern and got down to the money ball where he's like ball in hand shape and then missed it multiple times in a row. And you could sit there and say, well, that's a choke, but it was actually so easy, Josh. It was too easy to choke on the ball. You couldn't even choke. The only way to miss that ball was to like basically stop playing pool and just like, tell yourself that the rack was over and totally leave the moment. Like when you choke, at least you're in the moment. You know what I mean? Like you're struggling in the moment, but you're still in the moment. Like the only way to miss this ball was to completely just check out and just stop trying and stop paying attention and just let your arm swing while you're patting yourself on the back. You know what I mean? And so I told him, and I'm like, there's a long story I could talk about this. And the long story has to do with like how I've talked about how more rock climbers die hiking down the back of the mountain. Like they sit there, they climb up the mountain, and they're all hulked out. They're playing for their life, looking down at jagged rocks, and they're like, and they're all adrenaline out and they're focused and they know they're playing for the life and they're trying really hard. So they climb up the rock and then they pack up their heavy backpack full of equipment and their adrenaline is all drained and they're fatigued and their focus is gone and their sense of danger is gone and their adrenaline's gone, their energy's gone. And then they start trumping down the hill with this 80-pound backpack of equipment and catch a tree root and stumble off and fall to their death. And it's like more rock climbers die falling off the back of the cliff than they do climbing. And that was always like stuck with me. And I just feel like when people play pool, the amount of times that people solve the rack, get through the last hard shot, take a deep sigh of relief, and then immediately get down and fall off the mountain. It's like I see it so often. So I talk about this about how when you solve the rack, there's still one more challenge to overcome. And it's not a physical challenge, but now there's a mental challenge, which is you're about to lose focus. So now, anyway, there's a long story. But then the short version is this. I just told a guy, that ball you keep missing, that ball will miss unless you make it not miss. Like he just kept being surprised that he would miss the ball. And I'm just like, I don't care how easy the shot is. Doesn't matter how easy the shot is. It will miss unless you make sure it doesn't. And it was just kind of funny at the time. So anyway, that's something I was been thinking about. Have you been seeing that or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, I've seen it for myself. Like I've been playing there and I've been playing super hulked out because it's a 4 1/4 and I'm doing it. And then I was playing Andy the other day next to you and I solved some rack and ran 9 tough shots. I made like 2 bank shots and I'm like so happy, Debbie, on the 10 ball.
Was that the one where I heard you? Was that the one where I heard you shoot? I'm sorry. Was that the one where I heard you shout? I knew I should have gotten off that ball or something like that.
Probably, because it's like I literally made 9 trick shots with like absolute just calm conviction, and then I got straight on the 10 and I rattled it. I'm just like, oh no, because I was like, I could shoot this anyway, and it goes. And on a 4 1/4, when you're 3 feet away, you can catch the rail and it just can make you look stupid. And that's what happened. And I'm just like, oh, damn it. Like I couldn't decide if I wanted to draw it, follow it, or stun it. And I just sort of shot it and I missed it. And it was after like sweating my tuchus off running through all those balls. And I did it. I've done it multiple times since we've opened and it's fine.
Well, I mean, everyone does it. But one thing that made me happy, you mentioned Andy. So one thing that made me really happy is that I forget if he said it to me or if he said it to you or if you told me he said it to him, but somehow I heard either directly or indirectly him say something like playing on these tighter tables and just kind of playing a more 9-foot pool instead of bar pool. He's like, he said he's really growing to understand how hard this game is and just that how every shot is hard and every shot can be missed. And like, he's just growing a deeper respect for the difficulty of the game and the effort that it requires on every shot. And so that's it. Yeah. That made me happy.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And, I mean, Andy and I were playing the other night. I just told him, it's like, he's just a different player. And it's because he's on those tables, I think. It's because, how difficult it is and how much work he's put in and over the last couple of years, and it's just really fun to watch, man. That's the joy of having a club dummy is watching these guys grow and learn. And I've seen it too with Andy. This is so cool, Josh, to go in there and see Andy setting up shots, working on them, shooting them, staying down until the ball hits the pocket, watching the cue ball, and then standing up, really delivering a smooth stroke, shooting a ball in a bunch of times, and then setting it up a little different and working on it. I saw Mr. Sanford, Jamie Sanford, was shooting spot shots. He's a 1-pocket player. I saw him shooting spot shots and spot shots and spot shots and spot shots. And, I could name other players I've seen doing this up there, but like, it's cool. We've got a practice culture and it's, I know sometimes I feel like I'm being too critical on players. Really, I'm that critical on myself, and it just carries over into everything. But the fact is that
we've seen a lot of growth, we've seen a lot of input, and we've seen a lot of joy for doing it. So that's where I like to end on that idea. It's just more, we can always pick apart the difference between us and perfection, but man, there's been a lot of magic happening.
Yeah, and I'll just give you a real quick one on Jamie because it made me laugh today. He was telling someone about the club, and he doesn't listen to the podcast. He doesn't know your ninja thing. He says this place is like you walk in and there's ninjas training. He goes, that's what he told the guy. He goes, and he just loves it. He goes, it's just funny to see. Like he says, he comes in at night when we're doing those things, and he says there's two to four tables of just people training, and he says it's like walking into a ninja class. It's pretty funny. It was cool. So
well, yeah, and one thing I kind of ended up like this guy I played yesterday that I showed the club. He wasn't really going to join, and I don't know if it's because of location or money or what. But like, I got a little fired up because he actually called me today and he was excited he said that after us playing, he was really upset because he was mad. He won the first game, like I told you. And then I drilled him every game for an hour or two, and so anyway, he was in his mind, in my mind, I'm like, well, what do you expect is going to happen? But but in his mind, he was dying a little death. He was dying. And it's like, he doesn't know that Fargo rate suggests that he already outran the nuts for the day. Like, he doesn't know that. So like, the fact is that he was like really upset that he was like not winning, and so anyway,
couldn't give you his best game.
So then, he couldn't give me his best game. That's hilarious. So then he goes to his league match and he just kills it. He crushes everybody and plays the best pool of his life. And so then he calls me super excited. He's telling me about it today, and I'm like, bro, there's a reason I wanted you to join the club, man. I said, look, man, there's two roads you could pick. You could come to the club and you could literally play me and Josh and a bunch of other strong players on 4.25-inch 9-foots where you're sparring around with us for hours. And then we're doing these group practice sessions where we're taking little parts of the game and working on them and practicing, building those into runouts for a couple hours. And then we go back to sparring again till midnight. Like, we could either do that, or you could put your APA match and play on bar tables against players that give you multiple innings of rack, and you could run that for a couple of years. I said, those are two different roads, and they do not lead to the same destination. Like, not at all. I'm like, this is like when I was talking about what's on your calendar. Like, I don't care. Like, if somebody was to ask me, how do I know how good this guy's going to be in 2 years? To ask me how many hours he practiced or how hard he tried or how good he is or how talented he is or how much he wants it. Like, all those are interesting questions. But like, is he playing in the bar or is he playing at our club would be like the biggest question, wouldn't it? Like, so anyway, that's what I'm talking about. Like, what's on your calendar means more than who you are. It's like input equals output, man. And so we're giving people an opportunity to put in like hyper doses of input, both with our club and with these clinics. And so anyway, not everybody lives near us, and I get it, but I would just ask anybody listening to look at your calendar and look at what road are you on? Because there's different roads you can choose. So if you want to get to be if you want to get as good as you can get with this time and talent and tools you have available, the budget you have available, then pick the road that's going to take you where you want to go. That's it. That's all I got.
Yep. Awesome.
All right. This is the abrupt end of our podcast because we didn't have a very good conclusion rehearsed. So I will just close it out here and say thank you all for tuning in.